rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. There shall be famines and pestilences and earthquakes, and this gospel of the kingdom shall be preached in all the world, and then shall the end come.
Tell us, when will these things be? And what will be the sign of your coming and of the end of the age?
Here's today's prophecy update. We hear the term international community used continually in the discussion of international affairs. Yet, no one seems to know what the international community really is. Do you know what it is? Does it even really exist? Who formed the international community? Who is a member and who is not? Is it supposed to be a world government? Or are we forbidden from using that term lest we send people scurrying back into the abyss of nationalism? If the international community makes the rules, as it seems to, then shouldn't we know what this mysterious, nebulous entity is and who controls it? Apparently, we need to talk. Stay tuned for today's edition of End of the Age. I've been wanting to address this issue for a long time. However, there's so much on the table. Everything's been so busy with the elections and everything that's happened to this point. But I thought today would be a good time to do it. One of the things that has prompted me is this article that appeared in the New York Times. Donald Trump's victory promises to upend the international order. Think about that. Donald Trump's victory promises to upend the international order. Let me give you some of this article. Donald J. Trump's stunning election victory on Tuesday night rippled way beyond the nation's boundaries, upending an international order that prevailed for decades and raising profound questions about America's place in the world. For the first time since before World War II, Americans chose a president, listen carefully, who promised to reverse the internationalism practiced by predecessors of both parties. Now, how many times have I told you that? I've been telling you for years that we're voting for Tweedledee and Tweedledum. The last Endtime magazine was devoted to globalism, the 800-pound gorilla in the living room. Now, all of a sudden, the New York Times is talking about it. So he's talking about internationalism practiced by predecessors of both parties and to build walls, both physical and metaphorical. Mr. Trump's win foreshadowed an America more focused on its own affairs while leaving the world to take care of itself. Does anybody remember what George Washington warned us against? He said we must avoid entangling alliances. America is not like any other nation. Therefore, we don't need to get ourselves all tied together with other nations because they would entangle us, drag us into wars that we do not need to be in. So our first president talked about this. It appears that Donald Trump has tapped into that wisdom, and he's saying, we've got to put America's house in order while we're trying to help the world. America's ship is sinking. The article goes on to say, the outsider revolution that propelled him to power over the Washington establishment of both political parties also reflected a fundamental shift in international politics, evidenced already this year by events like Britain's referendum vote to leave the European Union. Mr. Trump's success could fuel the populist, nativist, nationalist, closed border movements already so evident in Europe and spreading to other parts of the world. For Europe and Asia, it could rewrite the rules of modern alliances, trade deals, and foreign aid. Now, let's just pause a moment to make sure we're getting all this. We have come through 40 or 50 years of the diplomats of the world, the leaders of the world, pushing us together. And they were driven by a belief that the nation-state system of the world is outdated. That we are now moved so close together through the internet, through excellent communications, through speedy travel. We're all so interconnected that the time has come to cast aside the national boundaries and to move into the New World Order. Yes, that's what Herbert Walker Bush was referring to in 1991 when he said, we now are on the brink of the New World Order. And that's what Tony Blair was referring to when he talked about globalization starting with the fall of the Berlin Wall. So the people at the top have understood this a long time, but they knew that you really didn't want to renounce the Declaration of Independence and swap it for a Declaration of Interdependence, so they've been leading us along a little bit at a time. But don't doubt, the people who have been doing this are in both parties, and they've been controlling both parties until this rogue candidate named Donald Trump came along. And he began to speak against globalism. And immediately, the political establishment went into panic. And many of the big wigs in his own party refused to recognize him. They made every excuse in the world not to endorse him. Why? Because both parties have been working a very long time to move us into this international community. Now, we're going to try to figure out what this international community thing really is, or if it is anything. The article goes on to say, it is hardly surprising that much of the world was rooting for Hillary Clinton over Mr. Trump, who characterized his foreign policy as America first. Polls indicated that Mrs. Clinton was favored in many countries, with the exception of Russia. Last summer, the Pew Research Center found that people in all 15 countries it surveyed trusted Mrs. Clinton to do the right thing in foreign affairs more than Mr. Trump by ratios as high as 10-1. So what did they mean by do the right thing? Well, what they meant was continue to move America into the one world governmental system, to continue to tear down our walls, to no longer enforce our borders, and to create one big world community with no boundaries, a world without borders. That's what they meant by that, because the same powers that controlled both parties in the United States have now controlled almost all the parties in all the nations of the world. We're that close into really realizing the international community. But we haven't answered yet what it is. Continuing. In Germany, where American troops have been stationed for more than 7 decades, our troops in Germany for 70 years, the prospect of a pullback seemed bewildering. It would be the end of an era. Henrik Muller, a journalism professor at the Technical University of Dortmund, wrote in Der Spiegel, one of the leading magazines in Germany, the post-war era in which Americans' atomic weapons and its military presence in Europe shielded first the West and later the Central European states would be over. Europe would have to take care of its own security. Now remember, they passed us in economic production in 2007, and they have been pulling away ever since. The 28 nations of Europe, which are no longer nations, they now have signed a common constitution. They now are the European Union. They are a virtual United States of Europe. Yes, they're stronger economically than we are right now. And yet, we've been using our dollars to protect them, and they've been getting a free ride. And I'm sure that you heard this in a lot of Mr. Trump's campaign speeches. Well, he was right. Well, let's go on. Perhaps nowhere was Mr. Trump's win more alarming than in Mexico, which has objected to his promises to build a wall and bill America's southern neighbor for it. Now, with about $531 billion, that's with a B, in trade in goods last year between Mexico and America, Mexico is America's third largest partner after 1, Canada, and 2, China. Now, just since the election of Mr. Trump has been notarized, Canada and Mexico have both said, okay, we can renegotiate NAFTA. They see the handwriting on the wall. Now, I fought against NAFTA back in 1984 when it was adopted, because I knew then it was a great big leap into a one world governmental system. However, the establishment wanted it so bad they could taste it, and they got it. They didn't just get NAFTA, though. When they saw there was so much ignorance about these international trade deals and where they ultimately lead, they went bulldozing right ahead, and they also adopted GATT, the General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade, which 6 months later they renamed what it really was to call it the World Trade Organization. So now we're in NAFTA on a regional level, we're in the World Trade Organization on a global level. And we're going deeper and deeper all the time into one world economy. And the theory is, if you join together economically, political union will inevitably follow, because the interrelations cause you to pass more and more agreements, more and more laws, until finally you have a system of international law, which becomes the basis for the international community. That's the road we've been on for a long time. And all of a sudden, this brash, bold, non-politician by the name of Donald Trump, who was sitting on the sidelines watching what was happening in America, and because of his vast business dealings and because of his vast friends in the political world, he saw what was happening. He looked at everything and he said, I've got all the money I need. I've built a great company, but my nation is threatened. My children, my grandchildren will never know the America I have known unless somebody steps in to reverse the trend toward globalism. He thought about doing it in 2012, but wasn't quite ready. I read a book over the weekend which said that he said, if I don't do it in 2016, it's going to be forever too late. So now, Mr. Trump burst on the world scene. Everybody said, no chance, no chance. The establishment made fun of him. The establishment press laughed about him. The comics, well, he was the butt of all of their jokes, until he kept winning primary after primary, and one opponent after another dropped out, and before long there were only 2 left standing. Well, that was sobering, but still, it's not going to happen. Not in my lifetime. But then Donald Trump became the winner. But he's facing the formidable Clinton political machine, and he's not nearly equipped. You think a non-politician, a novice like him, could face down Bill and Hillary Clinton and the entire Democratic National Committee? It's a pipe dream. But he was like the little engine that just never quit. The little engine that could. He kept on making speeches, 4, 5, 6 rallies per day, huge crowds, kept going. Still, the ultra-liberal press pounded away at him, has no chance. Every single flaw they could find in his armor way back to his childhood. They brought it up and they harped on it over and over and over and over again. Well, by now, I don't have to belabor the point. You know what's happened. He's the president-elect of the United States of America. Let's go back to our article. And even some countries that might expect to see some benefits from an American retreat worried about the implications. Counterintuitive as it might seem, China was concerned about Mr. Trump's promise to pull American troops back from Asia. If he indeed withdraws the troops from Japan, where we're paying big dollars every year to maintain them, the Japanese may develop their own nuclear weapons, said Shin Dengil, professor of international relations at Fudan University in Shanghai. South Korea may also go nuclear if Trump cancels the missile deployment and leaves the country alone facing the North's threats. How is that good for China to suddenly have two nuclear enemies on her doorstep? Now, for American voters, that was not the point. After decades of worrying about what was good for other countries, they decided it was time to worry about what was good for America. And Mr. Trump promised to do just that, even if the rest of the world might not like it. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we're not near done. I have another article I want to bring to you, and it's called The International Community Goal. The word goal means ghost or phantom. Now, before we go there, though, I want to pause a moment to tell you about conferences this weekend. This last weekend, just got in late last night, I was in Orange, California. I was in Paris, California. Great conferences, both places. It was exciting. We launched the Endtime, Understand the Endtime series in both Orange, California. By the way, if you weren't there and you didn't sign up, you need to call that church. You can call here. They'll give you all the contact information. You need to be a part. They're starting the 14-lesson series next week in both places, in Orange, California, also in Paris, California. If you've never been through the 14-lesson series, let me tell you, it is mandatory. You need to do whatever you have to do to go there. And by the way, it's free, believe it or not. 14 one-hour lessons. I'll be doing the teaching by way of DVD. Great conferences over the weekend. Now then, this coming week, I'm going to be in Springfield, Missouri on Saturday evening at 6 p.m. That's November the 19th. And I'm going to be speaking on From Here to Armageddon. I'll be laying out what you will experience starting now to the Battle of Armageddon. You're going to see it as clear as a bell. And let me tell you, in my opinion, every person on earth needs to go through these lessons right now. So I'll be there, Springfield, Missouri, Harvest Ministries, 3114 East Sunset Street. That's Saturday evening, November the 19th at 6 p.m. And then I'll also be at the same place on Sunday afternoon from 1 till 3. And I'm going to be giving a breaking prophetic fulfillment update. After I do that, I'm going to be taking your questions from the floor. This has become a favorite feature of what we're doing in all of our conferences. People love being able to ask what's been bugging them. So we'll be doing that. That's Saturday night and Sunday afternoon. Let's continue on here because I want to make sure that you hear about these conferences. And then on Monday, November the 21st at 7 p.m., I'm going to be in Blue Eye, Missouri. And down there, I'm going to be speaking on the same subject, From Here to Armageddon. That will be at the Morningside Church, 180 Grace Chapel Road in Blue Eye, Missouri. Also, I'll be in Blue Eye, Missouri on the 22nd on Tuesday evening at 7 p.m., and we're going to do the breaking prophetic fulfillments there again, letting everybody know where we are right now and taking questions from the floor. Once again, that's in the Morningside Church, 180 Grace Chapel Road in Blue Eye. Amazing things that are happening. Anyway, make it out to those conferences. We have people come in from 300, 400, 500 miles away sometimes. Don't hesitate to drive. It's worth it. You may want to come to Springfield on Saturday evening and get you a hotel and stay over for Sunday. It'll be a great experience. Anyway, we'd like to invite you to those things. Now, I want to get back to our article. The second article I'm talking about, the international community phantom, ghost. Here's what this author said. The international community is all in the mind. It amounts to a patchwork of allies and adversaries looking after their own backs. This comes from Israel National News on the 28th of October. The international community is a phrase from international relations referring to a broad group of people and governments of the world. Typically, the term is used to imply the existence of a common point of view towards such matters as human rights. Often it implies unanimous international support for a point of view on a disputed issue in order to enhance the credibility of a majority vote in the UN General Assembly. Activists, politicians, and commentators use the term in calling for action to be taken. For example, against what, in their opinion, is political repression in a target country. They'll always say, in the name of the world community, in the name of the international community, we're doing this. Now, to help you understand it a little better, let's plug Israel in. Let's insert Israel for the target of the international community, and you have the perfect example. All of you have heard these things, but here we go. Halt settlement building. Why? What's wrong with settlements? They're illegal, comes the reply. Who says they are? The consensus of the international community is that they are illegal. Make concessions for peace, they proclaim. Why, umpteen times Israel made concessions, but the neighbors won't ever come to terms with a Jewish state. Then make more concessions. The Israeli-Palestinian conflict is fueling terrorism. Who says it is? The international community. Settlement building is the main stumbling block to the two-state solution. According to whom? According to the international community. The body that is nobody exemplifies how a concept can pack a punch above its weight. How indeed, the less defined a concept, the more scope you have to call for action to be taken against a group or country. Now, many owe their power to the phantom international community. Diplomats barter through it. UN bodies live on it. Juridical figures cheat with it. Nonprofit bodies gorge on it. Opinion writers attack with it. The president of Europe's parliament is another honcho in that mold. Martin Schulz insists that Jewish settlements are illegal. According to who or what? According to the international law, he huffs. One waited for the leader of all Europe to be asked a few things about this Bible that they all live by, called the international community, which he brandishes. For one, why will he not recognize Israel's sovereignty over the territories occupied since June of 1967? After all, Europe's Bible gives Israel the nod to be there and to stay there. That's UN Resolution 242, passed in 1967. Another thing, why does Europe not make other countries that occupy territories such as China, Morocco, Russia, Pakistan, for example, label goods, whereas it makes Israel do so? Now, here's what he's talking about. The European Union has passed a resolution that any goods made in the West Bank area, in what they call the occupied territories, have to be labeled made in the West Bank, not in Israel. But they don't make anybody else do that is occupying territory. Now, imagine a label, product of Tibet, or produced by Han Chinese occupiers, or a label, Crimean produce under Russian occupation. Or how about Western Sahara minerals extracted by Moroccan settlers. Absurd. Yet, led by Mr. Schultz, the EU makes Israel label goods from the occupied West Bank. The label's got to be on there, and even from unoccupied Gaza. But to protest is hopeless and even foolish. The international community is all in the mind. It amounts to a patchwork of allies and adversaries looking after their own backs. With the right partner, the goal, the ghost, may come close to a flesh and bone thing. The international community is to the United Nations what tonic water is to gin. One without the other is not worth thinking of. It could be a rule of the UN General Assembly to invite the goal to every debate. In UN debates, thought pictures run riot, and Palestine on its pedestal has pride of place to mark the UN's endowment of special status to a country that is no country. Palestine's delegate called on the international community to hold Israel accountable for violations and crimes and to save the prospects for peace and justice. He then called on the world, another name for the ghost, to take strong action to hold Israel to account for violations of international law in the Palestinian territories. But don't get the wrong idea. Israeli leaders worship the ghost community with a fervor equal to anyone's. Well, I'll tell you what, I'll have to finish this in our next segment. I hope you can stay with us. You're listening to End of the Age. Not yet a partner with Endtime Ministries? What in the world are you waiting on? We need you now. The number to call to become a partner with Endtime, 1-800-ENDTIME, 1-800-363-8463.
From Here to Armageddon, a new exciting 8-lesson series to share with your friends and family. Order yours right away.
Answering many questions like how far are we from the Battle of Armageddon? What will happen between now and then? Where are we on the timeline? Your questions answered in this exciting 8-lesson series, From Here to Armageddon.
Go to endtime.com or call 1-800-ENDTIME. That's 1-800-ENDTIME, 1-800-363-8463. Order yours right away.
I know someone's praying for you can be cliche, and some might think that it's just a saying. But here at Endtime Ministries, we actually are praying for you. Irvin and the Endtime team begin each morning by taking your name directly to the Lord in prayer for our partners and requests submitted by each of you the previous day. The Bible tells us in Matthew 18, where 2 or 3 are gathered together in my name, there am I in the midst. We may not know each of you personally, but we feel like we are very much connected because you are one of the reasons that this ministry is able to spread our message throughout the entire world. We know this can be a very difficult time for everyone. That makes you partnering with us through prayer and your giving very special. Call 1-800-ENDTIME or go to endtime.com and partner with Endtime today. You can help make a world impact.
If your station only carries the first 30 minutes of End of the Age, go to endtime.com and click the watch button to continue today's broadcast. You can also finish up later by clicking the archives button.
Well, we're talking today about the ghost called the international community. You hear about it all the time. Nobody knows what it is. Nobody knows for sure who created it. But it's certainly used to force everyone to worship at its altar. And we've been going through a couple of articles that talk about the international community. This particular article we're going through is the international community ghost. We're ready to conclude, and by the way, I will be taking your calls in this segment of the program. If you'd like to be on the air with me, the number to call, 1-877-END-TIME. That's 877-363-8463 to reach our operators, to become a subscriber to Endtime Magazine, to become a partner with Endtime Ministries, to get your own copy of From Here to Armageddon, whatever you would like to do. That number is 1-800-ENDTIME. So operators, 800-ENDTIME, me, 877-ENDTIME. Now let's finish our article. But don't get the wrong idea. Israeli leaders worship the ghost community with a fervor equal to anyone's. Prime Minister Netanyahu brings regular sacrifices to propitiate the god. Consider the statement in the Jerusalem Post on February the 2nd of 2014, when he complained of plans to build housing units in disputed territory. The construction blueprints that came to light risk causing unnecessary confrontation with the international community at a time when Israel is trying to persuade the rest of the world to keep up pressure on Iran's nuclear program. It creates unnecessary confrontation with the international community at a time when we are making an effort to persuade elements in the international community to reach a better deal with Iran. Fickleness, though, could be Mr. Netanyahu's saving grace. There are times when he's moved to swear at the ghost, as he did on Fox News December the 10th of 2012. I condemn the international community for its deafening silence in response to recent vows by the head of Hamas, the Hamas militant group, to fight on until the Jewish state is destroyed. But then the ghost community knows what it wants. It wants a state of Palestine on its own terms. So enemies of Zion invent it before investing their heart and soul in the body without a body and a mind without a head. Thus, they have created the ghost called the international community. Now, ladies and gentlemen, what we're really talking about here is one world government. The United Nations plans to be the international community. It intends to be the global world government presiding over all governments. We have city law, county law, state law, federal law, and guess what? They're putting in place right now global law. Now, which will trump the other? As you go up the ladder, up the chain, each one holds preeminence over the previous one. Make no mistake about it. The international community, the United Nations, wants to be a one world government serving at the pinnacle of the pyramid over all the nations of the world. And any laws in any of our constitutions or in our Congress that conflict with international law will have to be changed to conform. I mean, it's already happening. When we sign a treaty, any provision in our laws that contradicts that treaty, because treaty is the highest form of law in the land, once that treaty is ratified by the U.S. Senate, we have to go change any laws that conflict with that treaty because it becomes the supreme law of the land. And they have built this system of international law by an interlocking system of international treaties. And don't you ever forget it. Now, President Obama wants to sign TPP right now. However, he knows he can't get the TPP ratified. It's going to bring 40% of the world's economy together under a free trade agreement. But he knows because of the terms are not favorable to the United States, he can't get the Senate to ratify it. So what's he doing? He's trying to push it through without ratification. Donald Trump is a threat to all of that. I'm hoping that as he is absolutely inundated with voices, as he assumes the heavy mantle of the presidency, I'm hoping that he keeps his equilibrium and his common sense that's brought him to this point is not drowned out by all the voices that are going to be shouting in his ears. Hopefully, he will remember that globalism was the number one issue of this campaign, And the American people knew it. The American people voted for him because they don't want to abrogate American sovereignty to an international authority called the United Nations or the international community or the world community or whatever you want to call it. America doesn't want to be in a one world government. We want to be one nation under God, not one nation under the international community. We want to be one nation under God, independent, sovereign, so that we can be the nation that God called us to be. We are accepting your calls on the program today. The number to call, 877-END-TIME. That's 877-363-8463. And do I have questions about Mr. Trump's ability to stay on the straight and narrow, to actually do what he has said that he will do? I do have concerns about it, because the more he surrounds himself with the people that have learned how to run the U.S. government, and he certainly needs people that know how to make this machinery go, yet the more he brings those people to himself, the more danger they will bring with them their old philosophies and explain to Mr. Trump, oh no, you've got to do it the way it's been done before. It's the only way that will work. We can find ourselves sucked right back into the morass of the international community. That's the reason I'm asking all of you, our listeners, to pray for your president-elect every day. He is facing formidable opposition. You see the demonstrations that are raging every night. Oh, a story came out today. I don't know, maybe I can give it to you. A story came out today that they've now found out that buses are lined up to bring all of these demonstrators. Yeah, here it is. Blocks and blocks of anti-Trump protest buses are caught on tape. Earlier today, that's today the 14th, we showed that contrary to USA Today's claims that the anti-Trump protests across the nation are spontaneous, involving people from all walks of life, according to WikiLeaks documents, at least 2 of the people profiled by USA Today have a history of being professional agitators for the Democratic Party, whose task is to stir up popular protest and, in extreme cases, unleash rioting, such as the following clip showing the latest day of violent protest in Portland revealed. And then they have video of all these buses. I'm talking about 50, 100, 150 buses that they're shipping protesters in, professional protesters. Somebody's paying for that. I cannot tell you for sure who it is today. I think I know, but I'm not going to say the name because I don't have documented proof. But somebody is paying the dollars to bring them in. We already found out the Democratic National Committee was stirring up the demonstrations against Trump's rallies during the campaign. That's already been outed. WikiLeaks already exposed that when a bunch of people lost their jobs because of it. But guess what? They've got more where that came from, and they just throw those people aside, plug others in their places, and they keep on doing what they do because they've learned how to stir up agitation. Well, they've learned it through the same people that Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton learned it from. They went to the same school of agitation taught to them by the Marxists. Here's the way you sow discontent and overthrow a country. That's what they would love to do. Well, anyway, this article, I'm staring at it right now in case you want to see it. It's zerohedge.com today. It's called Blocks of Anti-Trump Protest Buses Caught on Tape. You can go there and see the buses for yourself. All right. Well, listen, it's time to go to the phones, and let's go right now, right here in Dallas, Texas, to Marco. Hello, Marco. Welcome to End of the Age.
Hello, Irvin. Good afternoon. I got a question. I'm not from this country. I love this country and I pray for this country because I live here. But I was born and raised in Mexico. And my question was, do you have an idea or something what is going to happen to the country of Mexico and like the South countries like Brazil and Argentina?
Marco, I do. You know, as I watched this unfold, I did not agree with Donald Trump on everything. When he originally said, all people here illegally are going to have to go home, he said that adamantly. And of course, that would be the legal stance to take, because if they break the law, they have no right to be here. However, you and I know that there are people who've been here 10, 15, 20 years now, around 12 million of them, who have jobs, they work hard, they're not causing trouble. And so there are a lot of people saying, Mr. Trump, you're being too harsh. Well, now then, apparently, he is moderating. He was asked about this within the last day or two. And he said, look, the first place we're going to start is with the criminals. We're going to go to the people that have a criminal record, that are dangerous. They're going home. He thought there might be as high as 2 million of those people in America. And I fully agree with that. If they come in here, they have a criminal record, they're causing trouble, they have no right to be here, then they should be sent home. However, he then said, concerning the others that are here, we're going to put good minds together and they're going to learn how to tell whether the others should be sent home. If they're good people, then we may work out a way for them to stay. Now, that's the latest words from Donald Trump, and I personally think that's a good stance. Here's why. Yes, they broke the law, but I believe our leaders wanted them to come. Our leaders wanted them in the work pool, and you don't get 12 million illegals without an open door policy. Come one, come all. So for that reason, I don't think it's totally their fault. The word got out. You can go, they'll let you come, so come on. Well, they did. As long as they're not a criminal element in drugs, in robbery, in murder, in rape, in all those things, as long as they're not involved in that, and they're upstanding citizens except for being illegal, I think it would be the right thing to make a path for them. I think that's where we're headed, Marco. And I'm up against the break. I'll comment a little bit more about it when I get back. I appreciate your phone call very much. God bless you. God be with you, and God help you as you move forward into your future. You're listening to End of the Age. We got one segment left. I'm taking your calls, 877 Endtime.
If ever people need to hear the unvarnished truth, it is now. There are some subjects that are not politically correct to talk about, but they're urgent. That's why I'm grateful for Endtime magazine. If you're not a subscriber, you're missing information that will really impact your life. Endtime has a bi-monthly magazine that explains how current events are fulfilling Bible prophecy. You can get a 2-year subscription for only $29. You can also get a bulk subscription and pass them out to your church. We have gotten reports that Endtime magazine has caused spiritual awakenings in churches when they see the prophecies being fulfilled right now. You can start your own ministry and leave them in doctors' offices, libraries, laundromats. You never know if you might be responsible for saving someone who is searching for the unvarnished truth. That's what the magazine did in my life. Call 1-800-363-8463. That's 1-800-ENDTIME and get your subscription today.
In spite of the fact that many of us agreed with many things that Donald Trump was proposing, yet there were sometimes many of us thought he was too brash, too harsh, and we cringed just a little bit. However, it looks like he's getting his balance. The more he travels the country, the more he meets people, live human beings, that are in situations, the more he is developing compassion for them. Like I said, I think it was just yesterday or the day before, he did an interview. He was asked, will you really send 12 million illegals back? He said, what we're going to do, we're going to start with the criminals. If they're guilty of crimes, they're going back, period. I think he's right about that. Then he said, after that, we're going to bring good minds together, and they will then decide how to deal with the rest. But he said the first thing we got to do before we deal with all those is we've got to secure the border. We've got to build the wall. They said, will you build a total wall, a 2,000-mile wall? He said, well, some places it may be a fence. Now, I've been to Israel 27, 28 times. They have a wall and they have a fence. Sometimes there's not needed a wall. They have a high-tech fence. It not only is above ground, it goes 20 feet into the ground so they can't tunnel under it. And they defend their borders in a very skilled fashion. I mean, illegal immigration is almost zero in Israel. We can do the same thing here. And Donald Trump has already said, we'll get Israel to help us to build this wall because they're experienced, they know how to do it. One of Donald Trump's biggest assets is he knows how to get good people to do things that he may not know how to do himself. So that's what I think is going to happen. I think that Donald Trump is going to move toward a softening of his stance toward those people that are not criminal elements. I don't think he's going to really want to separate children from their parents as long as there's not a criminal problem. But let's face it, drugs is a huge problem in America, a huge problem. And most of our drug problem come from south of the border. It has to be stopped. It's eating the soul out of America. It's rendering young people to the place they can't hold jobs. They're so addicted to all of these drugs. That has to be stopped. I think Mr. Trump is right about that. Ladies and gentlemen, let's pray for him. I'll tell you what let's do. In a little bit of time that we have left, I can take more of your calls. 877-Endtime is the number to call, 877-363-8463. But in my research for today, I came across Trump's 7-point plan to drain the swamp. Now, this is what he's going to try to do in his first 100 days in office, which will begin on January the 20th, the day of his inauguration. This is what he plans to do to restore honesty, accountability, and change to Washington. They call it draining the swamp. The plan consists of 7 points and several legislative initiatives centered on limiting the power of the federal government. Don't we want to do that? Return to small government, empowering the American working class. I love these 7 points. 1, a constitutional amendment to impose term limits on all members of Congress. You can't get there and stay 40 years. Instead, there will be a term limit. You serve, whether it's going to be 2 terms or 3 terms. I do not know what the goal is, but you have term limits. You can't go back anymore. That way, we keep on having average citizens come in instead of professional politicians who develop vested interest and then they find ways to enrich themselves and it becomes corrupt. So his first goal is a constitutional amendment to impose term limits on all members of Congress. Number 2, a hiring freeze on all federal employees to reduce federal workforce through attrition. Our workforce has gotten humongous. And he says we can reduce it through attrition without going in and firing a bunch of people and disrupting their lives. There's a natural attrition. People are retiring, people are quitting, and we just won't hire anybody to replace them. And that way, we're going to trim down the government. And he's going to exempt military and public safety officials and public health officials. Other than that, he's putting a hiring freeze. No more new employees. That's going to bring the payroll down, which will bring the tax base that we need down. Number 3, a requirement that for every new federal regulation, 2 existing regulations must be eliminated. This is going to be good. So if you're going to put 1 new regulation in, you have to at the same time retire 2. We are over-regulated It's choking American businesses. So this is a great idea. If you want a new regulation, you got to go find two you can get rid of. That's point number 3. Number 4, a 5-year ban on White House and congressional officials becoming lobbyists after they leave government service. So if you've been in government service, you cannot go to work as a lobbyist for 5 years. Hopefully by then you found another job that you won't want to leave. This keeps people from becoming corrupt. They're in government, and then all of a sudden they're a lobbyist the next week, and they're able to sell their souls to the vested interest, many times foreign interest. Number 5, a lifetime ban on the White House officials lobbying on behalf of a foreign government. If you're a White House official, you cannot lobby on behalf of a foreign government for the rest of your life. Keeps you from using your inside knowledge and influence to enrich foreign powers and foreign governments. Number 6, a complete ban on foreign lobbyists raising money for American elections. We don't need foreign countries influencing our elections by donations of millions and millions and millions of dollars. We've had the problem. We have the problem right now. He says we're going to drain the swamp. Number 7, cancel billions in payments to UN climate change programs and use the money to fix America's water and environmental infrastructure. Is this a great one? We already are pledging billions to UN climate change programs, and they're programs that have never been ratified by the U.S. Senate. President Obama said we ratify with his signature. Illegal. You can't. He says, oh, it's not a treaty, it's simply an agreement. What? Do you think we're stupid? An agreement is a treaty. An agreement between two nations is a treaty. Of course, he wants to get around having to ratify before the Senate because the Senate does not want to ratify a climate change agreement because the majority of Americans do not believe in global warming. Consequently, throwing billions of dollars after it is like throwing billions of dollars down a rat hole. So now President Trump is saying we're going to just cancel all those payments to the UN climate change programs. You know what he's doing? He's striking at the heart of the move toward one world government, because all this climate change is a hoax. It's phony. It's phony. I challenge you to prove that climate change, that global warming is real. I challenge you to prove that global warming is real. I just downloaded an article today to say the earth is cooling right now at an unprecedented rate. Just downloaded it today. It's a hoax. Why are they doing it then? Because they're trying to build a system of international law so the international community can become the international one world government of the world and tie us all in. So we have a system of international law that controls every nook and cranny of our lives. Well, this would cut that off at the legs. Cancel billions in payments to UN climate change programs and use the money to fix America's water and environmental infrastructure. Bring it back here. Fix America. The best thing we can do to help the world is to help ourselves. A strong America can reach out and help the world. Paul Harvey, many years ago, promoted what he called the lighthouse concept. He said, you know, before we started going all over the world trying to make everybody be like us, everybody wanted to be like us. America was the shining city on a hill. But then when we started going around the world, invading places, having bases all over the world, and trying to force people to become like us, then everybody started hating the ugly American. So what do we need to do? We need to go back to that shining city on a hill. We need to go back and realize that if we'll keep our house right, that it will provoke others to copy us and to want to be like us. That's what's being said here. 7 points. You probably can read it for yourself. If you'd like to download it, go to a search engine, just put Trump's 7-point plan. I'm sure you'll see all these articles for yourself. I think it's a great plan for the first 100 days in office. Real quick, let's go back to the phones. Adolfo is calling from right here in Dallas. Hello, Adolfo.
Yes, sir. Yes, Brother Baxter. How you doing?
I'm doing wonderful. Thank you.
I always listen, and I've been to your conference. I got a real quick question. I heard that Obama, because I don't trust Obama until he leaves the White House, and I heard like the rumors if they start getting real bad, if he can if we get a more what he call protest or a terrorist attack, that he can put the martial law before he leaves the White House or not.
Well, a lot of people are saying that on the internet, Adolfo, but I think everything's a done deal now. I mean, he's going to be leaving here in a matter of a couple of months. And I think if he tried to declare martial law now, that the people of America would raise up and overthrow him by force. I do not believe it's going to happen. I know a lot of people have been talking about that ever since he came into office. There have been an unprecedented number of guns sold since President Obama came into office because so many people feared that he had the attributes of a dictator. However, it's not turning out that way. He's already met with President-elect Trump. They're already preparing the transition from the Obama administration to the Trump administration. I simply don't believe these reports. Just because you read it on the internet does not mean it's true. A lot of things on the internet are totally irresponsible. I don't believe it's going to happen.
Oh, okay. Okay, this was my question, though, because I heard a lot of rumors, and I prayed so Trump, he can come in and, start the presidential running the White House,
Yeah, I think we're in the transition now, and on January the 20th, you're going to see President Trump. Is he the Messiah? No, he's not. We need to pray for him. He's a mortal human being with flaws. Some of his flaws are pretty large. He also has tremendous strengths. We need to pray that God will encamp his angels about him. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you once again for joining us today as we've talked about the international community. What is it? What's going on here? I thank you for listening, but let me just ask you this. Everything is speeding up exponentially. Endtime Ministries is racing the rapture. I'd like for you to join us in that race. We need your help, your strength, your prayers. If you'd like to be a partner with Endtime Ministries, pick up the phone and call us right now. 800-END-TIME is the number. That's 800-363-8463. Just let our operators know what you'd like to do to be a partner. Pray for us, stand with us, subscribe to Endtime Magazine, get on the team. We got a great work to do in the short time we have left. Thank you very much. See you tomorrow.
End of the Age is a production of Endtime Ministries. This broadcast will be available on our website, endtime.com, in the archives section. On our website, you'll also find more information about how current events are fulfilling Bible prophecy. To reach our operators, call 1-800-END-TIME. That's 1-800-363-8463. Endtime Ministries is partner supported. We would like to say thank you to our partners who made this broadcast possible. To do what Matthew 24:14 said, to reach the world with the gospel of the kingdom.